Hi there, I'm Sam Williams, digital change agent and creator of Accelerate.
And I'm Drew McCarty, a coronavirus refugee and Accelerate advocate.
And in this episode, episode 2 of the Accelerate Adaptive Leadership Sessions, a chronicle of what's unfolding with COVID-19.
Today, we'd like to talk first a little bit about lockdown life, and as the spread is starting to be arrested in New Zealand, start looking toward what might be on the other side, or the new normal that we can expect. As always, don't forget to let us know what you might be interested in hearing about. We'd be happy to discuss it, so leave your thoughts and comments below. Thanks for joining us, and let's get started.
So Drew, what have been your experiences of being in lockdown?
Yeah, so I think there's been three major categories that I've been reflecting on. The first has been learning to juggle time zones. Given that I'm working remotely at the moment and we've got a number of projects on, it's been an interesting exercise learning to manage them from afar, especially New Zealand's time zone. Doesn't make it easy always, but that's all right. So the second part of it has been being very hyper conscious of the broader elements of productivity in my day-to-day life. Things like exercise, chores, and what I'm terming my self-improvement productivity around reading, doing online courses, and just simple self-reflection and that sort of thing too. And then the third point has been around the idea that procrastination in moderation has actually been a good thing in lockdown. So letting myself get up and walk around, bake something, go stand outside for 5 minutes and get some sun or just some fresh air has been really, really helpful for helping pass the days and just keeping my brain and body moving instead of being stuck in front of the screens all day. How about yourself, Sam?
Yeah, for me, I'm reminded of a letter to the future from Italy. And it's actually from an acclaimed Italian novelist, Francesca Melendri. And she wrote the following to the UK. I'm writing to you from Italy, which means I'm writing to you from your future. We are now where you will be in a few days. The epidemic's charts show us all intertwined in a parallel dance. We're but a few steps ahead of you in the path of time, just like Wuhan was a few weeks ahead of us. We watch as you behave just as we did. You hold the same arguments we did until a short time ago between those who will say, it's only a flu, why all the fuss? And those who have already understood. I guess for me, that was quite telling because we're now moving to a phase where we're going to start arguing about what is the right approach to restoring the old normal, and what does that mean? I guess what struck you about this particular article, Drew?
Yeah, I think there's also another quote that says, those who invite you to see all this mess as an opportunity for planetary renewal will help you to put things in a larger perspective. You will also find them terribly annoying. Nice, the planet is breathing, but because of halved CO2 emissions. But how will you pay your bills next month? You will not understand if witnessing the birth of a new world is more a grandiose or a miserable affair. So another quite foreboding quote, but one that speaks to me quite heavily as an environmentalist, and as someone who's hoping that we don't immediately turn back to our old ways and find ways of putting more sustainable elements into our recovery. But thinking about it in the perspective of the virus having made us already make big sacrifices, it really puts into context the way that we're going to have to make further large sacrifices in very different ways in terms of dealing with the threat of climate change.
Yeah, I guess it does kind of get you thinking. And one thing that's particularly striking here is that we've seen unemployment skyrocket, with 17 million in the US and countless others in the world. So, how we work and the types of jobs that we're going to be doing going forward are definitely changing. I wonder what your thoughts were on that, Drew.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting to think about from the context of China. And so it's the place I turn to a lot, as it's where I live normally. But it has been interesting to watch it open back up already. So I've got a number of friends that are there at the moment, and there are promising reports of restaurants and bars opening back up, which is nice. But underpinned by a new element of restrictions and necessary checks around temperature when you're entering office buildings. And so it's definitely a gradual emergence, but it is promising in terms of thinking about the ways that we can learn to live whilst managing virus outbreaks if we need to for the next 12 to 18 months, as there are some estimates of, but also maintaining some sense of normality in our lifestyles and being able to get back to work and out and about with friends, and simple things like going to a restaurant or getting a coffee. What have been your observations around the new normal, Sam?
Yeah, I guess what we're hearing from a business perspective is that there are things that center around mining information and accelerated digitization. So in other words, there seems to be quite a lot of emphasis on using data to model risks and to shore up supply chains, as well as find new and sustainable, and I mean sustainable in a lockdown world, digital revenue set of streams or digital revenue streams. As we come out, we can look to China, and I actually think the airline industry is a good bellwether to understand how the economy will restart cautiously and slowly. Air New Zealand anticipates that, all things being equal in the recovery, their business will be 30% smaller this time in 12 months' time. And this, to me, is a pretty good indicator. And while only one data point, what it could mean is that no matter what our sources of income, we can expect at least a 30% hit at an individual and professional level going forward. I guess, as The Economist puts it, and there was quite an interesting article on how the business climate will change. The exit from lockdowns will be halting and precarious, and the calamity will have lasting effects, accelerating existing trends, the adoption of new technology, a rethinking of global supply chains, and the rise of well-connected oligopolies. I guess I'm interested to hear what you're hearing and seeing in relation to China, Drew.
Well, we've got some statistics here around the effects that have happened so far on China's economic growth. And I think they come into three broad categories around sort of consumer confidence, business confidence, and the supply side of things, and investor confidence. So obviously we can see there's been a huge fall in investment in fixed assets. And I think this really stems from the sentiment in the housing market, which has really been propped up hugely by investor confidence for the last 5 or so years. So this will certainly take a long time to recover. Secondly, considering the retail sales statistics there, consumer spending will really be affected by a fear of further virus outbreaks and the desire to save money in the face of those uncertainties. So trying to rebuild consumer confidence will be a very big part of this. And the third element, as we look to the exports and the industrial and services production, is around the supply side. And I think this is the least risky of the three. by which I mean I think the supply side will right itself naturally. People want to go back to work and their employers want them to be back at work. So they will navigate this new normal and return to work as soon as they can, balancing with what the government will be requiring them to do and what they can responsibly do in terms of taking personal and employer risk on by asking people to come back to work.
So I'm fascinated to see that, for instance, unemployment in China is not quite extreme as, or the unemployment rates are not as extreme as you find in the Western world. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it comes down to a couple of things. First being that far less people work paycheck to paycheck in China. So they don't immediately have to turn to unemployment claims should they lose their jobs. But the second larger piece here is that people haven't been losing their jobs because their businesses they work for have been able to survive in various ways, whether that's through government support or rental breaks and these kind of things. And they've been able to keep their jobs, but even when they can't get back to those jobs yet. So many of them, there'll be factories opened back up, but they'll still be stuck on the other side of the country where they went for Chinese New Year to see their family. So they'll still have their job, but they won't be able to get back there yet. So there's a lag there in terms of the productivity, which they can't contribute to yet, and the unemployment side of things. So they're still employed, they're just not productive at the moment. Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess that's all we've got time for today. We are very interested in hearing from you as to what issues are up.
Yes, and for any guests or potential contributors out there, as we navigate this great adaptation and establish what our new normal is, we'd love to hear from you and have you join us for this experience.
Thanks so much for tuning in, and as they say now, stay safe.
And a big thank you from me. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and comments below, and stay safe.
Great.